So what we're going to talk about today is the control panel and the management review functionality within TouchStone. TouchStone has obviously tools to document and organize all of your processes, which is mainly the 4 functions in the organization chart right here. Once you've documented and created your job descriptions, then becomes the time when you want to implement and use your processes. So once the very first thing is documented inside a TouchStone, it's good to implement. And what I mean by implement is train your employees or your departments in how to use the process, how to use the documentation. Even if you've just documented what is and it's not changed in any way and the employees may be doing it that way already, it's still a good idea to sit down with everyone and say, we've created this documented process for this work. Let's just go over it and talk about how we're all doing it. So implementing is key. If you don't implement, then all the documentation is pointless in a way because it just kind of sits inside a TouchStone or is in a Word document and nobody's really using it and following it. So documentation is great for new employee training, but it's also important for ongoing training. So anytime you've documented a process, you've completed it, it's been vetted, it's good to go, then implement. I hear often people say, well, I'm going to wait until I have all the job description processes done and then I'll implement them. Or I'm going to wait until the department's done and then we'll implement them. Or worse yet, I'm going to wait until everything's documented and then we'll implement it all. Well, it becomes overwhelming to do it that way for the employees, and there's always this deadline that never gets reached. So the implement as you go idea is works better. It eases the employees into this idea of documentation if they haven't had it before. It allows you to take it kind of one piece at a time. You get the results of the implementation immediately, right away as you go. And it doesn't become this big overwhelming project that never gets finished. Implementing processes is a process itself. It's an ongoing process. It's not a project that you finish. So I'm going to talk today about how to use the control panel to implement, number 1. And number 2, how to use it to innovate and control your processes. And we're going to talk about management review and how managers can use processes to manage employees. So good managers manage process. They don't manage people and all their personalities and all the difficulties that comes with that. They manage processes by which people or employees get results. And there are tools within TouchStone that allow you to do that. So before I get into the control panel, I just want to talk about the business development cycle, or the process development cycle in a business. This is something to keep in mind that will allow you to see your processes as organic, moving tools that help you to run your business day to day. So over here in the 4 functions, we document. This is what happens here. There's documentation and the assigning of accountability. Once something's documented, it's then implemented right here. So documented, then implemented. Once it's implemented, then it's innovated and managed. So a manager is managing how the process is working and they're innovating it. Employees are even innovating it, coming up with ideas of how it can be better, and then you go back to document again over here. So document and assign accountability, implement here, innovate and manage, back to document. So you can see this is a cycle that has to continue. If there's any block along the way, if you aren't innovating, number 1, well, first of all, let's start at the beginning. If you document but you don't implement, then nobody follows it. Nobody knows it's there, and there's no chance of innovating or getting any results from it. If you document and then implement and then don't manage and innovate, then over time employees just forget about it. They just stop using it. What really happens is that they may have all the great intentions of the world of using it, but then something changes. It doesn't get innovated or fixed, so then everyone says, well, that just doesn't work anymore. We don't use TouchStone. We don't use that checklist. It doesn't, it changed. And then you're back at zero again. If it's not managed, you can't see improvements or opportunities for improvements. And if you get to this piece where it's kind of innovated and managed and everybody knows that, but then you don't go back to the documentation, then you never take advantage of what you've learned. There's not constant quality improvement. There's no improvement. There may be improvement within your business, but it lies in the skill set of your employees, and when they leave, it leaves. So remember the business development cycle, and you can see it inside a TouchStone, you can feel it, and there are tools that help support it. So here on the control panel, this is where employees have access to their processes that they're accountable for, and they have the ability to use them within the control panel. So these processes here for the Manager of Marketing and Sales control panel are derived from the job description. So anything that I put on the job description here, see the org chart on this position for the Manager of Marketing and Sales, shows up in the control panel. So if we add a process here quickly, I don't know, I'll add whatever, this one. So now this process has been added to this job description down at the bottom here. If we go back to the control panel here, this process is right here on the default list. So when we looked at it the first time, it wasn't there because it wasn't on the job description. And I had organized all the processes into these groups, which I'll talk about how you do here in a minute. So every time you put a process on a job description, it will show up here on what we call the default list. This list inside the control panel is a copy of what's on the job description. When you're looking at a control panel, you have the ability to create these work groups like you're seeing here. So this is employee training, management work. So it's not just strategic and tactical like it is on the job description. You have a way to customize it and kind of put the processes more into categories. These categories are all defined by you. So you go up to this icon called Organized Processes, and you can hit Create Group. So this is going to be the name of your group, and then you hit Save. The groups go top to bottom. You see my new group is down here. Through Organized Processes, you can also edit the group titles. So once you've put one in, if you want to change the title, you can delete them. You can reorder them from top to bottom. And then ultimately, you move processes into them from the default list. So this process right here is on the default list, and if I hit Move Processes, and I can see it on the default list, this is also how you move processes from one group to another. So I choose the process that I want to move, then I choose the group I want to move it into, so I'll choose Employee Training, since it's at the top, and hit Move. So now TouchStone's just taken this process out of the default list and moved it into the group. So ideally, you would have no processes in your default list. Anytime a new process has been put on a job description, so it's been given, that employee's been given accountability for it, it'll always show up in the default list. And it's kind of a good thing because they can look at it and say, oh, this is new. And then they can move it into the group that it makes sense to be in. The groups are typically by subject area, like this one's got employee training. That's a typical group name for a managerial position, managerial control panel. I've got management work. They can also be by timing, things I do at the end of the month, like this. Here's another subject area, admin. Most positions have some amount of admin, some don't, but a lot of managerial positions do. You can create a group and call it daily, things that you do every day. You can create a group and call it project work, so things that are done occasionally. You can create a group and call it not completed yet, and then move processes in it that aren't done yet. So you don't want the employee using them because they're not fully documented yet. You can create a group and call it Do Not Use if you like. So sometimes you may assign numerous employees to like the sales control panel, and for whatever reason there might be some of those salespeople that don't do certain amount of work, and the others that do, based on where the business is at. So you can take the work from that sales job description and move it down into a group for whichever employees it makes sense for and call it Do Not Use. So someone's asking if they can create a process first and then assign it to a specific role. So I'll just backtrack here for a second. So here on the organization chart, this is where you create the roles or the positions in the company, all the employees. And then you link processes from the 4 functions list right here to the boxes on the chart, which create the job description. So here's a job description for a salesperson, say. Now you can go and assign a user from account administration. So these are actual people's names to that position, to that box on the org chart, which creates a control panel for that position. So I'm logged in as myself. See my name right here, and I have a control panel for this manager of marketing and sales position. Because I'm the manager, I then see all my employees underneath me who have control panels for these positions. So these are all users from account administration over here, and they've been assigned to the salesperson's control panel. So each one of these people, when they log in with their own username and password, they're going to be able to access and use the processes that are on the salesperson's job description. So remember, here's that salesperson's job description, and here are all the processes I put on it. When each of these people log in, they're going to have access to those processes, like John here. So here's all those processes from the job description, but John's got them organized into groups, into different categories: sales to-do checklist, sales admin. So he's organized them according to subject area and how he wants to see them. If we go here to another salesperson like Mary here, or Mike, these haven't been organized at all yet. They're all on the default list. But these are the same processes that John is seeing, all the salespeople. But when he goes in and accesses them and uses them, all that information is unique to him. So yeah, you can assign roles or control panels, as we call them, to people, to employees, for the work that they do. So back here to this manager of marketing and sales position. So once you've organized the processes, and it makes sense to organize them, it's a good exercise to go through because it helps you kind of see things in categories and able to kind of look at it in a different way. In my opinion, it kind of brings the job description to life a little bit. Because when you're looking at a flat job description, which is strategic and tactical, it just looks like a lot. But when we start to organize it more into rudimentary processes, daily, even by succinct subject area, you can put them into a shape where employees can start to see day-to-day what they need to access and do. So when anyone's in the control panel and they want to use a process, they would select it. Let's go to this one. This is a discipline process that a manager would use. So here I'm seeing all the tools that were documented in this process. So all of these tools over here, the work plans, here's an uploaded file, here's some forms, here's a policy note. These were all created over here on the process tools page. So somebody went to this process called progressive written discipline or progressive written warning, and they documented it. They built the work plans, they put in the files, they put in the forms. Here I'm just seeing copies of it. So I could go down to this checklist and call it up, and I see the checklist. So I can't edit or change anything here. I'm just seeing a copy again of what was created over here. So I could go and fill out this checklist. I could put the employee's name in here that I'm doing this for. I could put in notes. for what happened, and then I save it, and it date and time stamps it and saves it back to TouchStone. So now the checklist is saved over here in this completed folder. There it is right there. Well, this is an old one, but there's an example of one. So every time you call something up by selecting it, it'll give you a copy of that. You fill it out. You can put a save it as in or not, or you can put in notes. But once you save it, it date and time stamps it, and then it places a copy or an instance of that over into this completed folder, which is the wrong one. There it is. So anytime I want to see my completed items, I can always go and run a report, which I'll show you here in a minute, or I can look over into this completed folder right here and take a look at it. So I can see all of them I've done over time. So again, if I'm giving somebody a verbal or written warning, I can go down to the checklist, put their name in, fill it out for that employee, then I save it. Once it's saved, I can print it, I can export it to Word, and a copy of it is then saved right here inside of the folder. Now nobody can see what I've done here except for me and my manager. So anyone who's above me in the organization chart can see, not across from me, not below me, but above me. Anyone who has a control panel that's above mine will be able to go in and look at these verbal and written warning forms. Nobody else can see them, not the employee, not anyone underneath me. This is an uploaded file inside of the control panel. Let's go to a different process here. It's a better example. Let's go to this referral process that we've been using over and over again in the trainings. If it's in here, there it is. So here's the referral process. Here's a work plan in this one, and the icons will tell you what the tool is. If the tool doesn't exist in the process, so nobody used it when they were creating the documentation, then it won't be here. It'll be, you won't see that icon. So here's a work plan, here's a checklist, here's some scripts in this process, here's an uploaded file, there's a training video right here, there's a audio file, there's some forms, and there's a policy note. So if I'm going to generate referrals today, I may go to this work plan, kind of look at it, and just remind myself of what I'm doing here. Maybe I don't even need to look at this because I've done it so many times. Then if there's a checklist in the process, this is something I'll want to complete. So anytime there's a checklist inside of a process and you're having employees go to the control panel and use it, then ideally they would create or fill out that checklist right inside the process. So they select it, and then same idea as before, I'd fill this out. I may put this in as the client's name that I'm generating the referral from, and then I say it, and it date and time stamps it. Then as I'm making the phone calls, I may have run across a frequently asked question, or maybe I'm leaving a voicemail script. Maybe I'm doing the actual call, and I just want to have the script open in front of me as I go through it. So here's the script. As I'm reading through this, I may notice that something doesn't work right with the script. So I may make a note that says, look at this to my manager. I may put in notes. I noticed this when I was using the script. So this is an example of an employee being mindful enough to notice when something's off and make a note about it. So how about this? This doesn't work well. So you're teaching by doing this, you're teaching your employees to use the process, number one, pay attention to it, but also make recommendations for how it can be better. Imagine if everybody did this. So it doesn't make sense for every process that everybody runs, but there are key processes where this does make sense. And as they're doing the work, they can start to contribute to how it can be better. If even like 10% of the employees did that, imagine what would happen to your documentation. Imagine how much better it would get over time, especially with processes like scripts, things that are creative, that can be innovated to be made better. A lot of times I hear, well, if a process is creative, then it can't be documented. Well, that's absolutely not true. The creative processes are the most exciting ones because you can then capture a new way of doing it. You can capture the best way of doing it. You can be creative enough to innovate your business to the point that you're doing it better than your competition. So then I'd save this, and it goes back into the completed folder. Here's an uploaded file right here. So I can access an uploaded file like this one. And if I hit View File, it's going to show me the file. Here's this letter. Now I could view this letter, and I could change this to, a different person's name. If this is a spreadsheet, I could fill this spreadsheet out. And then I could go File, Save As, so I'm saving my edited copy of that. And then I go Choose File, and I find the file, and I hit Open, and then I save it. So now I've just put an altered version of this file up into the control panel. So if there's a spreadsheet or a form that's in a Word document, any kind of a contract, anything that needs to be filled out, I can fill that out, save it back to the control panel, and then it's stored here in this folder, in this completed folder right here. So if I hit go to this, I'm going back to it, I hit View File, I'm going to see that altered form or contract. If I'm doing this the next day and I want to edit this letter again to send it off to someone else, I just choose that uploaded file, I hit View File, and now I'm getting a clean copy of that Word document or that Excel spreadsheet, and I can fill it out again and then save it back. So you can use the uploaded file tool like document storage. In fact, you can call up an uploaded file that is a Word document, say, that's editable. Somebody can fill in all the information that they need, save it, send it to the client, have them sign it, get it faxed or emailed back, save it as a PDF, scan it back in, like you would have to do normally if you were going to save it as an electronic version, and then you upload it back to TouchStone. So even though this original file was any kind of file type, PDF, document, Excel, when I hit Choose File, I can re-upload any of these file types. This is also a good place to just have the master document that someone needs to look at and use, whether you're going to use it for file storage or not. They can go right to the control panel and know that they're always going to be able to access the most current version of anything that's used, any file that's used in the referral process right here. For training videos that are inside of a process, you can select them, have the employee watch them right here in the control panel, and then say, did it, and then save it, and it dates and time stamps it. So this is your evidence that the employee has watched the training video. I even saw in someone's account the other day that in the notes field, they required the employee to type in what they thought of the training video. So I thought that was clever. And then they save it back to TouchStone. So this is evidence that the employees, and a lot of you that are in virtual businesses where you don't have offices where people sit down and do things, that this is very useful because you have evidence that they watched it. Same with audio. So this is an audio file. They can listen to it right here and then, date and time stamp it that they've listened and watched it. They could even do a, look at this here and say, we should do this, give you an idea. Right into the audio file section, or let you know what they thought of it, and then they save it and it stores it back in TouchStone. Forms. If you call the form inside the control panel, this form is now live. So all of these fields are live, and I could fill this out. So if I was doing like a daily schedule, or if I had a referral planner for who I was going to try to target that day, it was an inventory control form. Any kind of a form that needs to be completed and someone else needs to be able to access and see, or the employee needs to just keep track of it themselves, they can do this right in the control panel and then save it. If they save it right into the control panel, it saves a copy of that, but then they could also print it or export it to Word. That's what these icons are for. So if it had to be printed for whatever reason, you could do that as well. For a policy note, here's a policy right here. This is always good to have the employee access it at least, once and say, read it and Agree? I'm not a lawyer, so I don't know if this is going to hold up in court. It probably won't. It's not a digital signature, but it's good enough for management purposes. Well, I didn't get it. I didn't read it. I didn't understand. So what the employees do is they go and complete things here inside the control panel. They use the processes. They look at them. They fill out checklists. They fill out forms if necessary. Over here, there's a place where training notes are kept. So the manager puts these notes in, which I'll show you how to do here when we get to the management section, but that's what this is about, and the employee can see the notes that managers have put in about their training of the process. And then there's this last updated. So this lets you know when the process was last updated. So this referral development work plan was updated on 1/29/2015. If I ever see these dates and they supersede any kind of training I've had, then I would say to myself, well, who changed this and where's the training? Later in the summer, we're having, in our new release, we're having version control inside of TouchStone. So this is going to get a little bit more sophisticated, where you'll be able to keep versions of documents. But right now, this is a place that shows you, when it was edited and changed. So again, here in the control panel, this is where you go to do the work. A lot of great management processes can be used in the control panel, and it's really useful. It's useful to keep that information somewhere where it's all together. It's useful for the manager to know what they've done and when they've done it. It's not in files all over the place. I mean, it's one thing to have a documented process that maybe if you're with it, you can go back to it and make sure you're following it right, but it's a whole other thing when you complete it inside of TouchStone, because you're looking right at it and saying done, done, done. It's all saved there. Management information is something that needs to be referred back to often as well, so knowing right where to go to get it is useful. For tactical processes, like administrative things or things that have contracts or documents in them that have to be saved and stored, it's useful. Like here's a contracts and proposals process. So just again as an example, I can call up this contract here. I hit view file. It's going to open it, and this is in a Word document. So if I go file, save as, I save this. And then I can go back to TouchStone, hit choose file, find that contract, even if it's a PDF, hit open, and then save it. I can put this right in here as, the client's name if I want. Hit save. So now this contract is saved back to TouchStone. And if I ever want to find it, go here to the completed folder. There it is. Next day I'm doing another contract. Hit this. I have a blank copy of the contract. So two things are happening here. One, I know I have the most current version of the contract because I'm accessing it right here. And then I'm saving copies of it over here. If you have spreadsheets inside of a process, let's see if this one has one. So like a cash flow template, which is a spreadsheet, I would go view file, pull up the spreadsheet. I'd fill this out for the current month right here, all my cash flow information. I go file, save as. So I'm saving a copy of this. And then I go back to TouchStone. I hit choose file, get it, hit open. This is March. I don't really need to do that because once I save it, it date and time stamps it. Now let's say April rolls around. I don't want to hit this because it's going to give me a blank copy. I'm going to go back here, go to my spreadsheet. This is the changed spreadsheet, the one I filled out for March. I hit go. I hit view file. Now it's opening this spreadsheet that has my March date in it, and then I go and do April. Same thing, File, Save As, hit it back to TouchStone, upload it again, and then I've got Marches. So this is a rolling file, a rolling spreadsheet. Not one that's filled out once and then it's done, but one that you want to fill out for 6 months or the whole year. So TouchStone has got a copy of that uploaded file right here. Instead of accessing it here that gives me a blank copy, I'm going right here and finding it and editing and changing it. So that's how you kind of handle a situation where you have a rolling file. Someone's asking a question. I'm going to answer that in a second. Let's see. So let's talk about management review next. So the employee is here doing the work. They're following the processes. They're marking things as complete when required. They're filling out checklists if necessary. Or they're at least just looking at this once a month, say, and going through their processes and making notes about how things have gone for the month. Maybe they're preparing for the one-on-one meeting that happens, later that week. And it's a requirement that they innovate things, that they think about how they could be better. Or they know that their manager is going to go through the processes with them and talk about them, so they're looking at them. Here in the management section, here is where managers can review the work their employees are doing. So I'm the manager of marketing and sales right here. And underneath me on the org chart are all of these positions here. So anybody who has a control panel for these positions here, I'm going to see in my management section. So over here in account administration, anybody on this user list who's been given a control panel for any position underneath me on the org chart, I will see them. I see the user's name that's been created here, so I know the exact person, and then I see the position that they fill. So here's all the salespeople. When I go to any specific person's name on the list, I then see their processes. So everybody here that's under the sales position, they all have the same processes that they're having access to. But each time each one of them goes in with their own username and password and completes things like we were doing up here, it's unique to them. They don't see each other's. I'm the only one that sees all of them. So here, this is John's control panel, and these are his processes. Now, each user has the ability to create their own work groups, these little groups here. But I, as the manager, can create them as well. So I can go in and create John's groups for him right here in the management review. He can also do it himself inside of his own control panel. You can require that all the salespeople have the same work groups, or you can decide for individual reasons that they would be different. So here, when I'm looking at his control panel, I might go in and just see what he's doing. So I can look at processes like this sales to-do checklist. I can say, I wonder if he's done them. If I have a particular question about one thing that he's done or not done, I can go to that. I can look at it. So now I'm seeing what he's completed and not completed on the checklist. I can go to a process if I've got a particular question, like where's this contract? I can look for it here. What's he been doing with his referrals? How has his follow-up been going? What customer complaints have come across today? Did he fill out the checklist for this certain customer complaint? I'm looking for a form for a certain complaint. So reviewing management review or looking through it has to do with ongoing day-to-day work that you're just checking on. It also has to do with training. So here in the management review section, I can look through each of the processes when we first hired John and think about his training. Give him a training on each checklist that he's supposed to do. This is job description training. These are processes right on his job description that as a new employee he needs to be trained in one at a time. I could go through the referral process, train him in the work plans, the checklist, the scripts, take him through a thorough training. I can make notes about the training. So if I select a tool up here and I hit this little notes button, I can make training notes. notes to John about the training, what's happening, he can see these notes, which is the way it should be. I wouldn't put any derogatory information in here. These are active coaching training notes to him, saying, how can you be better at this? This is what I observed during the training. This is what I think you're good at. This is what I think you still need to work on. There it is. Save it. So now this note is kept next to that tool. He can see it when he logs into his control panel, and I can see it right here. When I'm happy with his training, I can flip this little flag, and then he gets all these little gold notes, which shows that he's been trained in every one of these tools. For more complicated processes, I can also go one tool at a time. So I can say, okay, I trained him in the work plan. Now we're going to work on the checklist. Now we did the checklist. So sometimes in training, if the processes are complex, you kind of go one tool at a time, or there may be multiple work plans within it that you're going to train them in the first, how-tos first, and then the next month the rest. Or again, you can flip this flag and then it marks him as trained in everything. So in the management review section, I'm looking at John and his work. I'm asking individually, how is he doing on these processes? I'm also thinking about ongoing training. How can I make him better? So if I've got one process a week that I'm really focusing on with each employee, or one a month, and I notice how one employee is doing it differently than another, or one is getting better results than another, then I can look at the process and say, what is John that's doing differently, or how is his skill set different than Sam, say? How can I make John better? So it's a much different reality as a manager, because you're looking at something tangible like a process for how to create strategic alliances, and you're evaluating each person on that process, and you're seeing how one is better or different than another. You're, number one, seeing how to make the salespeople stronger. You're also seeing how to make the process stronger, because I'm not just saying John is better than Sam. I'm saying hopefully I'm saying somehow John is utilizing the process more than Sam. Now, there are going to be skill sets and personality characteristics that some employees won't have or will have better than another. But that then influences my hiring. So that's still about a process. Because if I notice over time that one person's skill sets or personality traits make them better at this position than another, well, then I'm going to only hire those types of people from here on out. And if it becomes very radical in the different results, I may decide that John's not suited for the position, which is a good decision to come to sooner rather than later. So thinking of these processes as a management tool empowers managers and makes management easier. I can't imagine not having this as a manager. So if you're a manager kind of shooting around in the dark with no documented processes for how to manage your employees, this is a good motivation to do it. It's a way to really be objective and effective. It's a way to be an effective leader as a manager as well, and really have employees be looking up to you and saying, wow, look what they're doing. Look at what they've created. Look what this business has created that they're then training and giving to the employees. So just to recap, document processes here, 4 functions. Organize them by accountability on the org chart. Implement the processes here. So what the implementation looks like, it's super simple. Once you've got a documented process, here's a documented process for how to do a performance review. Maybe we've been doing performance reviews the same for the last 10 years. I don't know. Maybe it's new, but now it's documented. So you're going to sit all the managers down, everybody who does performance reviews, and we're going to say, this is the way we do it here. This is how we conduct them. This is the checklist you need to fill out. This is the form. This is how you will fill it out. This is when it's due. These are the steps for how to do it. Again, people may already know this, but it doesn't matter. You're sitting down with them together. You're saying, this is the new way we do it here. Here's a documented process. Everyone's going to follow it. If you decide to have the managers using it in the control panel, then instruct them to do so. Say, you're going to call up the form right here. You're going to go through and fill it out right here in TouchStone. You're going to save it so that we always have a copy in TouchStone. So you're going to print it and give it to the employee and go through it, and this is how you conduct a review. You can also then sit with employees. They don't have access to this process, but you can sit with TouchStone in front of them and say, each department, and say, this is the new performance review process. This is what it's going to go through. This is what the managers go through. It's all documented. It's very objective. This is how they look at it. So implement as deep as it needs to go. For management tools, even though there are people who will not be giving performance reviews, but they'll be receiving them, it might still be useful to give them. If there's give them the training. If there's videos inside the process, anything like that, have the manager sit down, review it, read it, study it, so it's implemented. And then you go on to the next process that you document. So implement as you go. We've just implemented that new performance review process, right? You documented it, now it's implemented. That's a big change. It's a great thing. So you're using TouchStone now, you're using the documentation. Once all the managers actually do a review and it's all saved back to TouchStone, and let's say that all these people were managers underneath me and I wanted to make sure they had done their reviews, I could now go in and look and see that they did. So implement in the control panel. Then go and start, once a process is implemented that employees are using, then practice as a manager just reviewing it. Take a look at what they're doing. Up here next to the org chart tab, there's a reports tab. So here's where I can go to kind of get a microscope into the control panel and into management review. So you can always go to the process, click on the completed folder, and look and see what's there. But this is a way to kind of globally look at it all together. So there are two types of reports. There's control panel reports, and there's management review reports. So the control panel reports allow me to look at my own control panel activity. So over here, anything that I've completed in any control panel that I have, the results of that will show up in these reports. So I may want to, look for a certain contract or make sure that I actually filled out my checklist for the week. Or I want to, look for a certain customer complaint. So you can search the criteria based on date range. You can search the save as. So if you're looking for, a client's name, you could put that into the save as. You can search for a particular type of tool, so just checklists. Sometimes I'll do the beginning of the week and the end of the week and then hit checklist just to make sure that I've done them. And then once you hit run report, TouchStone's searching for whatever it is that you put in the search criteria. So there's all his name in the search right here. So that's why it's pulling it up in the save as. If I'm looking for a performance review that I did for a certain employee last year so I can compare it to this year, I can search their name and it will call it up. I can look for, one-on-one meeting agendas that I did a week prior. Over here in management review, this is where a manager would go to search for information their employees had been saving in their control panels. So you may do this on a weekly or a monthly basis just to make sure the checklists are being done. So you can go right, depending on how many people you manage, you can go right down here, process tool type, and just hit checklist and hit run report. It's going to give you, all the different checklists that each employee had saved in TouchStone and the different types. If I want to look for a certain employee's name, I can go here to user, hit John, then hit run report checklist, and I'm going to see all of his checklists that he's done. I can put in a date range. I can search for a save as. You've been noticing how I've been putting look at this into the save. This is a protocol that we use here. Look at this. This is what employees will do when they want their manager to see something. Hit run report, and then you're going to see a look at a list of all the look at this. So I would look at it anyway because I'm always looking at everything, but this kind of shows you. So before like a department meeting or someplace we're going to talk about processes, you can search for the look at this, and then I can go right to it and see the employee's note that they've made. So it's opening it right here. every single one of these, and it flips to it behind here, and it shows you the note that they made. So this reports allows you to look inside of each individual employee's control panels and kind of see their activities and what they're up to. So you can look for innovation ideas. You can look for specific client things that you need to see, questions they may have about a process. So that's the reports feature. Coming kind of early summer in our, I think it's going to be probably the summer release or maybe the fall, there's going to be new reports coming out, customizations to these reports as well as some more global TouchStone reports. So this reports tool is going to expand coming this year. So let's talk about the system of the week. And this is a technique for training. So training is essential, new employee training and ongoing training. So this particular technique has to do with new employee training inside of TouchStone. I think a lot of times it's easy to think of new employee training because it makes more sense how it's organized. And that's going to be the focus of what I'm about to talk about. But also remember the idea of ongoing training because it is important. Existing employees becoming better in what they already know how to do in a way, learning new things. So inside the library, inside of Guiding the Business, there's a process here. If I go Add from Library General, that's called New Employee Training. So you can select this process and add it to your system just by hitting Save. This is how the library processes work. You just select them from the library and hit Save. So this process allows you to edit it for each individual employee. I'm going to drag it over here so you can see. So I've edited the titles. I called this one salesperson, this one marketing assistant, this one senior tech. All I did was go to the library process, and I just edit the title of it. And you can title these any way that you want. But the minute I change the title for admin, now I can go back to the library and pull it down for another employee. So this is a template, and the minute I edit the title, I can then go back to the library here and pull it down again. So the way that we've done this, you can pull it down numerous times and get the same template. And all you have to do is edit the title. It changes it so TouchStone doesn't think you already have it, and then you can go back and download it again. So what this template is it allows you to create a step-by-step training checklist for each position. You can go to the job description and export it to Word, and in a way, that is a training checklist. You have to train every process on that job description. This is just kind of a little bit more detailed way of going about it. So if you're thinking to yourself, what's the difference between this and the job description? Well, there's really no difference other than you've got this kind of field here where you can plan out the training a little bit. So basically, the step-by-step is you're going to take the job description processes and you're going to put them into the checklist. You can export it to Word and just cut and paste them. You only have to do this once for every position on your org chart. Not every person, just every position. So this is going to work for all the salespeople. So here I've got Department and Company Innovation. So this is a process that's on their job description. If I want to see the details of this process, I've hyperlinked it to the process itself. So here's a work plan on how to do Department and Company Innovation, how to give feedback, how to do guidelines, how to put that little look at this in the Save As folder. So this is a new sales employee, and I'm going to train him on each process one at a time. I've decided what the total training time is going to be, 2 hours for this process. Background and relevance, why is this important to the company culture? Why is the Department and Company Innovation process essential? A lot of times this can just be in the objective of the process. It says why it's important, why it's there. So the manager talks about that. So this isn't the HR department doing this. This isn't new employee onboarding per se. It isn't HR training. This is on-the-job, job description training, generally done by the manager. I've got the study time required, so I think the employee should be required to study this for an hour. I've got the teaching of the process. You're going to go over it, give examples of innovative ideas, maybe show in the control panel how to make notes about that. If you'd rather do it in some kind of input form, do that. Demonstrate how you complete it. And then you give a test. Ask the employee to recite the process, to complete the form, to talk to you about what they heard and learned, how they would use it. So here we're using the content of the process to train the employee, and we're going over some key specific, teaching ideas, studying, teaching through role-playing or watching, looking over someone else's shoulder, me standing in front of you, explaining it to you, testing, how do I test your knowledge? So if you think about it, it's the basics of adult education, well, even primary education. You have a textbook of some sort, which is the process documentation. You've got a teacher, which is generally the manager, someone more experienced. Even the best technicians don't make good teachers. This is why the idea of having managers in place, managing processes, is essential to a growing business. This concept of just taking a new employee and throwing them with another person who knows how to do that work is very costly. So spend the time to think about how is it going to be taught to the employee, and then how will you test their knowledge of it. Then, down even to more technical process like referral development or requests for information or contracts and proposals. So think about this outline. What's the background and relevance? What's the total training time? What's the study time? So the total time it'll take from beginning to end, the study time for the employee, the time that I'm going to teach it, the time for the testing. So you see what this is doing? In the end, if you go through every process on the job description and you plan it out like this, and again, you only have to do this once per position on your org chart. You do this once. If I add up all the training time, 2 hours, 5 hours, 20 hours, I have a roundabout estimation on what it's going to take me to fully train someone to fill this position. That's a novel concept. It's huge, though, isn't it? If I know the processes work, and I know I can teach a competent person with the minimum qualifications how to do it, and I plan on investing the time to train them, and we get to 10 hours, we get to 3 processes, and I'm seeing quite clearly that this employee is not going to make it in this position based on tangible information that I have on how they're learning the processes, then I let them go. I don't just keep, banging my head against the wall trying to make it work. Or better yet, somebody's flying through the training, they're learning it all, and I have fully trained a salesperson in 50 hours, which is what my processes told me I could do, and they're up to minimum qualifications in that amount of time. So every time someone leaves, I know I can replace them. I know what's going to cost me because I can take all that time I'm paying them plus the management time plus a little overhead, and then boom, I know it takes $10,000 to replace a new sales employee. That's power over your business. I mean, it's a way to, it's scalable. It's a way for you to plan it out. If some of you were thinking when I was talking in the org strategy webinar about, how you have to grow from within and how you have to be able to juggle sales with operations, and you were all looking at the ground going, that's impossible, I can't do a budget. Well, this is one of the key ways that you learn how to grow your business for real, like grow your own talent from within, be able to juggle sales with operations. You have to have power over your training. You have to have knowledge over it. So this is an effective way to do it. Try it for one simple position. I fully realize that there are managerial positions that are highly complex and difficult. There are technical positions in some of your industries that are very difficult to document and very hard to train for. Try this with something simple and you'll more rudimentary, and you'll see how it works. even if you could do this for, let's say, 15% of what someone does, I mean, that's pretty good, right? It's better than nothing. If you could do it for half, imagine that. Once you could do it for half, what if you could do it for just one more process after that? So practice something like this. This checklist here can be used in the, obviously, in the control panel as well. So I, as the manager, can have this sales training process here, and I can go here to the checklist, and I can, save this as the employee's name. And then as I train them in each of these processes, or each of these ideas, I can check off this checklist. Then I could go to management review for Jim, and I could mark him as trained once he's finished with the processes. But in addition to having marked as trained in management review, I also have this more thorough checklist about how the training is going and where he's at in the training. Plus the employee knows as well. You can always export this to Word or just print it for the employee and say this is where you're at with the training. So this is about implementing your processes, using them as management tools, and learning how to effectively keep your processes relevant and up to date. To really make them something that's going to be quantifiable and be able to help you increase the profitability of your business. Someone's asking, what would be the first steps to start with TouchStone? Yeah, so this is kind of back to the beginning, but maybe it's good because we're at the end now. When you first approach TouchStone, the first thing to really start on is getting it organized well. So it's as simple as creating your 4 functions list. So not documenting everything right away, but making a master list of everything in your 4 functions. Going and pulling things from the library, just getting a basic list together. Then build your organization chart. That's number 2. So build this as a picture of all the positions in the company. And then go and build your job descriptions. So the job descriptions are built by linking the processes from here to the boxes on the chart. So there's this add existing process, which allows you to create all the job descriptions. So when I say organized well, that's what I mean. We're all the processes listed, built the org chart, built all the job descriptions. Generally takes anywhere from 10 to 20 hours, I would say, depending on the size of your company. But it's an effort worth making just to get it organized well. Once that happens, I mean, even if nothing was ever documented, you've got these great job descriptions that are really specific about processes that each position is accountable for. Even if we never documented, how to do a performance review or how to make decisions, at least there's a pretty practical listing of what employees are supposed to do. But once you're at that point, then it's time to start in on the documentation that you can do. So you've got everything organized by position. You can go in and say, okay, sales department, we want John and Tom and the manager to document all the processes. Or we want every key employee to work on them. Or we want just this one star salesperson to work on this process. So think about your talent. Think about who's doing things well, who's good at writing, who's good at technical writing. You don't have to be a great writer to document processes, but you have to be able to think in a structured way. Who has some computer skills, that's always good. There's nothing worse than trying to stick an employee on documenting processes where they can't really think through a sentence or a structure all that well, and they're bad on the computer. You're going to be wasting time. So think about the best way to get that documentation to happen and who are the people that can help you, and then start delegating. Each manager, obviously, should have some part in the documentation of their subordinate positions processes. If there's no managers in place, if you're a much smaller company, well, then it's you maybe who needs to jump in there and start documenting. But once TouchStone is organized to this point, the documentation becomes easier. Let's say you have a salesperson that you want to document the sales processes tool. You can organize them in order of priority, just dragging them up and down here. You can even go to the process, and right here in the title, you can put the person's initials and put in a due date for the process, and then save it. Now if I look back at this job description, I'm going to be able to see what I'm supposed to be working on and when it's due. So this is a good technique for when you're delegating of the processes, the documentation of them. So hopefully that answers your question. But in a nutshell, get organized quick or as fast as you can by building 4 functions, org chart, job descriptions, and then start in on the documentation. And then on the heels of what I said today, once the first thing is documented, and the library processes are the easiest to implement because, or document and implement, because you get a head start with them and there's some of the more basic things. But once the first thing has been done, then practice implementing. It's kind of fun. Practice having a short meeting, even do it in an email. Say, hey, in TouchStone, we did this time management process. We want everyone to, once a week do X, Y, and Z in it. Even if it's as simple as that. If it's something that's more robust, then sit down in a meeting and discuss it. Show what you've done, show the documentation, implement it, and then go on to the next thing.